Right.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, yes, please.
Sir, one error occurred, sir.
Okay, yeah, please share your screen.
Sir, while updating,
While updating, okay.
update employee set name,
Mm-hmm.
where ID is this.
Okay.
And when I run, then SQL exception data truncated
Okay.
in. This is the problem.
Okay. So double की जगह आप string भेज रहे हो.
Sir, here.
So, No. The thing is, see, you just check your database. Which table are you trying to update? You are trying to update the employee table, correct? Now, so can you just एक minute? Can you just describe the employee table? Look at what is the order of your elements. I think okay. ID, name, and email, na?
Yes, sir.
Data truncation, truncated, incorrect, double value. So line number, it's not giving us line number. Okay, you do one thing. So in line number 60, after 68, within the catch statement, after 67.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you write one more statement. Yeah, system.out.println. Otherwise you just write ex.get stack trace. Yeah, you type ex dot small case. Yeah, ex dot no sorry yeah, second option, get stack trace, get stack trace, second option, yes, semicolon, run it. Okay, why it is not printing it? 1 second.
Sir,
Yeah,
like first we send a string. So at the place of set int 1,4, we update it to set string 1, Sushant Roy. So it is updating right. So it give a correct answer because we set name equal to question mark, email equal to question mark. So the sequence is mismatched.
correct. The sequence is different now. Correct.
So
what she is saying is correct. See, the name is ID1, email is 2, whereas ID is sequence is 3. Correct. Perfect. See, the first question mark is ID1. Second, sorry, the first question mark parameter.
Name. So we
the
give
index
it
is
a set
right.
name.
Yeah. Set in should be 3.
Sir?
Prince, line number 62.
62.
Set in that particular value should be 3.
Sir, this.
The name should be 1. 1 is correct. Look at the order in your update statement. Update employee
Email
set name.
2.
Email is 2. Line number 64. Prince. I think we lost the connection. Line number 64, it should be 2.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, right. Run it now.
Executed.
Yes. That was the discrepancy. That was the difference. Yes.
So what happened here, sir? Can you explain?
Look at the order. Look at read your statement. Update employee query.
Name.
That is your first parameter.
Okay.
Email is your second parameter. and ID is your third parameter.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. So now guys, so what we are going to do is we will going to do some CRUD operation, or we're going to create a layered project to do these CRUD operations. Basically, we want to do this CRUD operation, but we want to write a separate function and we want to implement these logic in the individual functions. Okay, so let's create a project. So I want to create a simple project. I would like to name this as com.crud MySQL. Okay, otherwise I can also write it as MySQL CRUD. So this is my Maven project. So in my project, it is configuring for 1.5. So let me just modify this. So as you all know, I want to add a dependency for my MySQL. So we already identified what dependency we are supposed to add. So let me go there and copy this dependency and paste it to my new application. So I save this file. Please observe that it got downloaded. Okay, my template is ready now. So now what I'm supposed to do inside this. So I want to create a folder structure for my source. Okay, so what I will create here. So I'll create a folder structure like com. So this is my CRUD app, correct now? So I'll call it as CRUD app. So inside this particular CRUD app, I would like to create various packages. So for example, we know how to create a server package. Inside this CRUD app, I want to create a service folder. Okay, this is where I'm planning to create my service logic. This is a package wherein I'll keep all my interfaces and implemented classes related to my business logic. So similarly, guys, I would like to create one more package called as DAO. DAO stands for Data Access Object, or this is where I want to write my data access logic. Okay, so let me create the second package. Okay, similarly, guys, I want to create one driver. That driver I can create it in this particular main package called com.crud. Otherwise, if you want to create it in a separate package, you can also go ahead and create a package called as driver or a controller. So this particular driver or a controller package will going to have an code or application or a class that will run my application. Okay, so I can call this as controller, or you can also call it as a main. Basically, this is where my driver class will be there, and this is where my business logic will be there, and this is where my data access logic will be there. Okay, let's say basically I want to do a CRUD on these particular employee table. Okay, that's what I want to do. So now let's create some contracts. So contract is nothing but creating an interfaces. Correct now? So I will create something called as employee service. Okay, it has already created. Okay, I'll right click here, go to new, I'll create an interface. I'll call it as employee service. So this is my interface, guys. So what are all the methods you would like to add? Those methods you will be able to do it here. So basically what operations you want to do with your employee. So let's say I want to add an employee. Okay, so let's say I would like to write one service called as add employee. So you have to give me an employee object. Okay, so you give me employee. Okay, so let's say if you successfully add this particular employee, then I would like to, if you want to return, if it's successfully added, if you want to return it, then of course you can return it. Otherwise, for time being, let me return you a Boolean value. Okay, so I want to create this employee class now. Okay, so now let me create one more package wherein I can create my Pojo classes. So here I would like to create one more package. This package, I can call it as a Pojo, or else I can also call it as DTO. DTO stands for data transfer objects. So the purpose of this creating this DTO package is to keep my classes that will carry the data from one layer to another layer. Okay, so this is called as DTO. So inside DTO, I'll create my Pojo classes. So let me create one class called employee. So this employee will going to have, let's say, integer ID will be there. So let me make it private integer ID, private string name, then private double salary. Okay, so then I would like to add some let me make this as a Pojo class, my empty constructor, my parameterized constructor, all my getters and setters, and of course let me just also add my toString method. Let me save. So my Pojo class is ready. So in my service, let me import it. So you can see import employee com.crudapp.dto. So where are we supposed to create all our Pojo classes? Guys, if I ask you to create one more Pojo class, where do you create?
DTO.
DTO, simple.
In DTO, data transfer.
DTO, yes, simple, good. So now I have to write my application logic now, business logic. So I'm creating this interface. So add employee will going to get you this employee information. You should, if you successfully add it, you should send me true. Otherwise you should send me false. So that is the purpose of add employee. So similarly, guys, I want to say update employee. So similarly, Boolean delete employee. Either you want to delete employee by the object or delete employee by ID. So if you just give me ID also, I will be able to delete it. delete employee by ID, integer ID. So we have to do one more method called as get employee by ID. So you have to give me the object of the employee, correct? No? So let me employee get employee by ID, integer ID. So these are all the business logic I want you guys to implement. Okay, so now how to implement this? Quite simple. I'll show you a couple of them later. You guys will be, you should be able to do it. So let me go to the class and let me call this as employee service IAMPL. So this is my concrete class that implements my employee service. So and then I need to click on this option to create the template. So I have to implement get employee by ID, add employee, update employee, and delete employee. Okay, so this is where I should write my business logic. But where am I supposed to write my code for accessing my database? Correct? No? I don't want to write my data access logic inside my service. I want to write it separately. So how do you, where am I supposed to do? So I have a separate package here. Okay. So this particular package, I need to create one more interface. Okay. We will discuss why we are doing this way. Basically, we want to do a loose coupling. Suppose tomorrow I decide to connect with some different database, then I can connect my service layer with a different implementation. Right now I'm implementing with MySQL. Tomorrow, let's say, sir, my client will say, I want to implement with Oracle. So then my URL will change, my database name will change. So my implementation might also change. The query what I write will also change. Okay, so now I'm trying to keep my data access logic in a separate layer so that it can be loosely coupled with my service. I don't want to write my data access logic inside my business logic. I want to keep it separately. How I keep my business logic and error logic separately? Here, I want to keep my service logic and my data access logic separately. So today you are connecting to a SQL database. Tomorrow you want to connect to a NoSQL database. It should be flexible. I don't want to touch once I implement business logic. It should be intact. Okay, right. So now what I want to do, I want to create employee repository. So employee repository is an interface. So here also I'm going to give you some of the contracts. So what are all these contracts? So the contracts will look similar to these guys. So let me copy this. Let's assume that these interfaces also have employee repository also has these methods. Get employee by ID, add employee, update employee, delete employee by ID. So who is supposed to implement this? We are supposed to implement this as of now. Okay. So when we go for a Spring framework, we can get that implemented by our Spring framework. Okay. Right. So now let's go and implement this. So we'll call it as employee repository IAM. 1 second, guys. Give me a second. Sorry, guys. So we have created this particular interface. So I just want to implement this class. So this is called as employee repository IMPL. R should be capital here. So let me make it capital. Employee repository IMPL. Finish. This employee repository IMPL implements my employee repository. So I have few contracts that I'm supposed to implement it here. So look at how we are organizing things. So whatever we want to, however we want to implement our business logic, here is a place to implement. However you want to implement your data access logic, you can implement it here. Is this much clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So now what are we going to do now? So for example, let's try to complete one method at a time. So let me represent what I did in a pictorial format so that you get an idea. So basically, I'm creating one CRUD application. So that CRUD application is having 3 layers. So one is a controller layer where I write my driver class. So second is my service layer where I write my business logic. And the third one is my DAO access or a DAO layer where I write my logic for data access. So out of this, I have my database here. This database right now is MySQL. So from my driver, I'm going to access certain methods in my service layer. That particular service will going to access certain methods in my DAO layer. That DAO layer will going to communicate to my database. Okay. So similarly, guys, my database will going to respond me with some data. That data I'm going to return it to my service. So my service in turn will going to return back what my service says to my controller. So basically, I'm trying to create a layered project. So this is my controller layer. This is my service. And this is my DAO layer. So I'm talking about these navigation through one single method. So let's say in my driver, I want to add one record. Then I'm going to call one add method in the service. So that will going to call one method in a DAO layer that can add a data to my SQL. So similarly, whenever you want to update it, so you will going to send data of the employee through this DTO. DTO means our Pojo class. Through Pojo, I'm going to send just data. So similarly, when my SQL is sending back the data, I can also send back the data using a Pojo class. So when you try to retrieve an employee by ID, so my DAO layer should retrieve me. Suppose if my DAO retrieves an object of an employee, then my service should be able to give back that particular employee. So basically, my controller should call the appropriate method here. When you call appropriate method in the service, my service should call the appropriate method in the DAO layer. My DAO should do the job of what is requested by the service. So whatever methods are there in the DAO layer, I should be able to access in my service layer. Whatever services are available in my service, I should be able to use them in my controller. I should not directly call the DAO layer methods. I should always call the service because service is meant for a certain purpose. So this is where I'm writing my business logic. Okay, my service knows which DAO methods to call to implement the business logic. My controller knows which service method to call to get the job done. Okay, so there is a hierarchy. There is a layer. This is called as a layered approach to solve a given customer problem. So we call this as a layered you call it as an architecture or you call it as a design. Layered design. So in future, whichever application we develop, we always develop this layered design. So you should know these particular concepts. So now let's try to implement one by one. Let's write one controller in which let's try to access one service method, and that service method, let it access the DAO method, and let's get the job done in one flow. Okay, let's go one by one. So let's go to the controller. Let me create one class. Let me call it as a driver. Let me add one main method here. So inside this, let me create. We call it as a loose coupling. So what do you mean by loose coupling? We need to use the reference of my interface, employee service. I call this as employee service is equal to, I'm going to call new. I have to create the object now. I will create the object of my implemented class. I will get the access to the object which you have created here. So then I will be able to call this method called as get employee by ID. Correct now? So now what I do, so in my driver, so let me call a method called, so I want to get the object employee employee emp is equal to employee service dot get employee by ID. So I want to send ID 1. So let me import this employee. So I'm calling this method, so it should return me the object of this particular ID. So I'm not doing any exception handling as of now. So let me just try to print it. So this EMP is nothing but found employee. So now this particular implementation is not yet done. You can press this control button, bring your mouse pointer on this method. It will tell you I can go to the interface or I can also go to the implementation. So let me go to the implementation. So this is where I'm supposed to complete this business logic. Okay, so this get employee by ID, I don't want to write my access logic here. Okay, the job of this particular business logic is to call an appropriate DAO layer method so that it can fetch you the details about your employee. So you are sending me ID here. ID is here. You are calling this method. I'm supposed to implement it here. So what I'm supposed to do? I should have an access in my service class. I should have an access to my repository. So which repository you want access? I want an access to my, so here also I can make it as private employee repository is equal to employee employee repository is equal to new employee repository implementation. Okay, once finished, employee REPOSITO. I think I've given a different name there. Let me check. Okay, the O has been missed there. So let me refactor. employee repository. So I want to import this repository. So try to understand. So my driver is loosely coupling my service. So similarly in my service, I'm loosely coupling my repository. So if you want to change your implementation, you can change it here. Okay. So the interface will be same, but your implementation, you can change it. Okay. So now I'm doing a loose coupling of my repository with my implementation class. So what I will be doing, so I would like to call this method, this dot employee repository dot, I want to get employee by ID. Okay, here this particular ID is getting transferred from my service layer to my repository layer. So this is my repository interface, and it is pointing to the object of your implementation, and I want to implement that logic. So this is where I want to really communicate with my database, and I want to make this happen, or I want to fetch the record of the employee, particular employee, and I want to create the object of employee and send it back. Okay. So now let's try to implement this. So here, what do we need? How do I connect it to my database? I can write one utility so that from that utility, I can get the connection object. So basically, so let's look at our morning application. So this is our folder. If I look at the driver class, guys, so I want to create this particular connection object basically. So then I want to create a connection object, and then I would like to create these statement, and then I will be able to do whatever I want here. Okay, basically I want to access this particular statement. If I get the statement, I will be able to run execute query, or I will be able to execute this execute update. Okay, so for example, yes, I'll be able to do either execute update or execute statement. Okay, only thing is if I get the connection object, then I'll be able to do whatever I want. So let's create one utility class that can give me this connection object. So in the DAO layer itself, let me write one class. It is called, let me call it as utility class. In my DAO, I will create one class. I call it as utility, or I can also call it as DAO utility. So in this DAO utility, let me write a method so that can create the connection object for me. Okay, so I will write one method that should give me the connection object. Connection, I'll just say get connection. Okay, suppose I don't want to create the object of this class. I want this method to call without creating the object of this particular class. Then I can make this method as a static method. So let me import this particular connection object. So from my Java SQL. So it should return you the connection object. So let's get that logic from here, guys. So 1 second, let me put it here so that we can easily refer. So if I call this get connection method, it should get me the connection object. So first of all, I need to create these things. So let me create that inside this. Then let me have this try catch try block that gives me this connection object. Okay, so I would like to catch also. So if I catch, I would like to catch this particular SQL exception, guys. So, and if something goes wrong, I would like to just print this SQL exception message. Let me import this SQL exception as well. So you can see, so I'm just creating a statement here. So if I get this connection, oh, sorry, one second, guys. So should I create this statement? One second. Yeah, either I can get this. Yeah, better. Okay. Mhm. One second, guys. So I think with respect to the prepared statement, I will be able to do all the jobs. Okay. So let me just create the prepared statement itself. Okay. And return you this prepared statement object itself. One second. Okay, guys. So let me just simply return you the connection. So later you will be able to do whatever you want to do. Okay. Right. I'll try to simply connect to the database with your given credentials. Okay, if it gets connected, you will going to get the connection. Okay, what I want to return. So I want to return the connection. Return connection. So there is a utility class. So if you call the get connection method, it will return you this particular connection. So where it is getting connected, it is getting connected to your port number, demo database, and this is what you want to do. Okay, right. So it is showing me some error. What is this error? I think this is my catch. So I need to write one more closing parenthesis here. So let me format it. Let me save it. So static connection. So this method must return a result of type connection. Okay. So what I can do at the end, I can return this particular connection. Okay. So right. Right. So now let me go to the DAO layer. So in my DAO, so I have these repository implementation. Okay. So now here inside my get employee by ID. So I want to get that particular connection. So let me create connection is equal to, I have created one DAO utility dot get connection. Okay, so I need to import this. So it's going to give me one connection object for my existing database. So I'm going to refer it using my reference field. So whatever you want to do with this particular connection, you can do it now. So I want to create one prepared statement. Okay, or I can also create one statement. Okay, and then using that particular statement, I should be able to execute my query, and I'm going to get one result set. So that result set, I will pack it to one employee object and send you back. Okay, so now let me execute this. Let me create this statement and let me execute a query. So what I want to do here, I want to create one statement using create statement. So everything we need to put it into a try catch block. So let's put a try catch block. So this result set also needs to be put it in a try catch block. Let me put this also in a try catch block. Okay, instead of okay, I think we need to go for prepared statement, because I want to make this query as a dynamic query. I don't want to write a query like select star from employee where ID is equal to, if I write it as 1, then it will become a static query. I want to make it as a dynamic query. So I need to put a question mark there. So now my create statement will not work. So I need to go for something called as prepared statement, correct? No? So because my query is a dynamic query. So what I need to do, I need to go for this prepared statement. Okay, guys. So let me go for, instead of creating a statement, let me create a prepared statement. Okay, so that particular prepared statement. So what I want to do with my prepared statement. One second, guys. So this particular prepared statement will go into execute my query. Okay, sorry, execute. Okay, one second, guys. Give me a second, please. Sorry guys, I got held up. Am I audible?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry. Okay, right. So what I want to do is I want to create one prepared statement. Okay, so here 1 second, guys. So this particular query, select star from employee where ID equal to this question mark is my first parameter. So I am setting that particular parameter value to my ID, which I'm getting into this particular method. So this argument ID, I want to embed into this particular query. Select star from employee where ID equal to this particular ID. Okay, if you want to make it more clearer, then you can go for, suppose you can go for alias like emp. So you can make it as emp dot id equal to this particular id. It will get embedded like that. So now what I want to do, so how will I be able to execute this query? So whenever I go for execute update now, so this one is also giving me one result. So that particular result, I want to make use of it. So now what I do, go for execute update. So now let's see what my execute update is going to return me. Okay, 1 second, guys. So can't I select? Okay, 1 second. Yes. So from this prepared statement, I wanted to create one dynamic query. I created using prepared statement. So I inserted this ID also to my query. Now I want to execute this query. It will going to give me result set. Okay. So now if it gives me a result set, so then I need to check. So I know that it will going to give me a single result. So then I will check for that particular result set dot next. So next we're going to tell me true if it has a value. So then what I'll do, so I will be sending, or I will be referring to the object of or the particular row of data, correct now? So my result set will be pointing to that particular data. So now what I can do, so I should be able to get all those data. So what I'm supposed to do now, if it exists, so then I want to create the object of my employee, or let me create this employee reference outside, because we know that it will going to have a blocked scope. So I'm going to make this, or yeah. employee is equal to new employee. So here I need to add these details from my result set. Okay, so from my result set I can get these data from my result set dot get. So I want to get the integer id, get int. So let's say I will give the index as 1 comma. So let me go to the result set dot get string. So let me get the name from index 2. Similarly, result set dot get string. I know that even email ID is also a string. Okay, I think let's see 1 second, guys. What was the constructor? One second. So if I look at my employee DTO, this is my employee DTO. So it has got an ID, name, and a salary, guys. Okay, so I want to fetch my salary. So I don't know the index of it. So let me just go by the ID, name, and a salary, guys. Okay, so now let me go to that employee repository implementation. So instead of these, I would like to get them through their ID. This one is, I don't know the order. Let's say name. I want to get a string string. String column label would be your salary. Okay, salary is I think it is not a string, it's a double. So what is wrong here? Okay, I need to close one more parenthesis. Let's save it. Okay, so let me close this. Okay, let's look into this particular method once again. So you will go to, from your service layer, you will going to call this method get employee by ID. So what I'll do, I will get the connection from your utility class. So then I will create two reference variable. One is called statement and one is called employee. Okay. So ultimately, let me make this as null. If something goes wrong, then what I'm going to return you is a null employee. Okay. So I can also do the exception handling here. I'll get to know that whether there is an employee by ID equal to given ID. If an ID does not exist, so this particular if statement will going to get into this else block. So in this else block, we will do the exception handling data. So that means this get employee by ID is capable of throwing one exception, that is employee ID does not exist. So in my implementation logic, I can get it here. If the result set does not have a next value, then that is the error. I can throw one exception object. Right, guys, so I'm expecting an object of this particular employee if everything goes fine. So right now, so let me show you once again what we have done. So in my driver class, guys, I'm calling a service method get employee by ID. So ID I'm passing is 1. If I go to my service is calling a repository method get employee by ID. So this ID is getting there. So hold your control button, click on implementation. So now we are in the implementation of our DAO layer. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to call this get employee by ID from the repository. What we do, we get the connection, then we prepare the statement, select star from employee where employee ID equal to question mark, that ID we are going to set it, and then we are trying to execute the query. If you get the result set, So then we are going to create the object of the employee and we're going to finally return. If everything goes well, you should get the object. Otherwise, you will going to get it as null. Am I clear, guys? So let's first of all check whether we have a ID 1. Yes, we have ID 1. So now let me try to run this particular project. Right click, go to run as and run it as Java application. You can see, guys, the connection is successful and it is giving me the object of employee ID 1. And this guys does not contain any salary. His salary is 00. Correct now? So let me update his salary, guys. Update employee salary is equal to 1,500, where ID is equal to 1. So it got updated, guys. So suppose if I go for select star from employee, all of you please observe. So your salary is 1,500 now. So now let me go to my application and run it. Is this clear, guys? Guys, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So now what I did, I wrote my data access logic in this implementation class. That's all. So similarly, you know how to write the logic for add employee, update employee, and also delete employee. So what I'm expecting now, just like how we implemented this particular get employee by ID, I want all of you to implement other remaining methods. Am I clear, guys? So you create a prepared statement and then I think rest of them have a requirement for update, correct now? Execute update, you can do that. Am I clear, guys? Guys, why there is no response? Will you be able to do it? Or you want me to show one more method? Please speak up, guys. हेलो
सर एक और मेथड बता दीजिए
और एक मेथड बनाएंगे ठीक है so let's say I want to call this employee service 1 second guys Yeah, sorry guys. So I want to implement employee service dot add employee, let's say. Okay. So I want to add a new employee here. This I call it as a new employee. So you create the object of a new employee and pass it on. So employee, new employee is equal to new employee. Using the constructor, you create one. So what is the ID I want? So I want to create an ID. Let's make sure that it is not an exception. Okay. So 9 is not there. So this, let me make it as 9. So let me make some test data. So this is my EMP 9. So this should be the salary. Okay. So let this be salary like 4,500. So this employee, I would like to send it to add employee. Guys, so I'm sending the information about my new employee using this DTO class. That's all. So it is carrying my data from my driver controller to my service. So let's go to the implementation. So this method will going to get my object here. So what I'm supposed to do? So I have to implement my logic to add this to my database. So I will call this dot add employee. All of you please observe. So I have a repository. So this dot employee, one second guys. This dot employee repository. On employee repository, I want to call this add employee. So add employee should give me Boolean value. That's all. If it sends me true, so I'll get to know that employee added successfully. Okay. So now let me go to the repository method. Hold this button, click on open implementation. So this is where you have to write your logic to add an employee. And this is where we wrote a logic to get an employee by ID. So let me just format it once again. So now what I'm supposed to do, I need to get the connection. I need to create the statement. And then, yes, let me just get the connection and statement now. Okay, let me do it from the scratch here. This is my add employee. So what I want to do, let me get the connection. Connection is equal to my my DAO DAO utility dot get connection. I'll get the connection. So once I'm done with the connection, you can observe here, I need to create one statement, and that particular statement, okay, one second. I'm not using the statement, I think. Okay, we are using this prepared statement. Okay, I don't need this. Okay, so let me go for try block. So let me create one prepared statement. Prepared statement is equal to I need to get from this particular connection dot prepare statement. So here I need to write one insert statement here. Insert into employee So I want to insert the ID, name, and salary. Okay. Values. Other attributes also there, but I'm not inserting them. Question mark, comma, question mark, comma, question mark. So I'm going to send 3 parameters there. So I prepared the statement. So let me add the catch statement. I want to catch is SQL exception, that I'll call it as E. So basically this is a parameter. So if an exception happens, that will be caught by this catch method. So E will be a reference variable to that particular exception object. So I just want to print that exception message, E dot get message, get M. Yes. So prepared statement हो गया. So a prepared statement को हम value डालेंगे. Prepared statement dot set hint. Set hint. So index is 1. So this particular value, I'm getting it from this particular employee object. So employee object से ले लो. Employee dot get ID. Get ID लेके इधर डाल दो. बाद में prepare statement dot set string. Set string. So name डाल रहे हैं हम. उसका index है 2. Then from my employee object, call get name and insert कर दूं. Again go for prepared statement dot set double ना, set double. So उसका index है 3. हमको employee parameter से get salary बना दो. पूरा क्वेरी प्रिपेयर हो गया. सो अभी एग्जीक्यूट करना है. सो कैसे एग्जीक्यूट करना है? सो वी नीड टू क्रिएट. सो इट विल गोइंग टू रिटर्न मी एन इंटीजर वैल्यू. ठीक है. सो गो फॉर योर प्रिपेयर स्टेटमेंट डॉट एग्जीक्यूट अपडेट exe update. So what this execute update will going to give me? It will going to give me integer value. So let's say if it returns you a positive integer value, you look at this return, it will going to return me how many rows got updated. If it is written greater than 0, then successfully it has inserted a value. Okay, if it is a 0, then it has not inserted successfully. Okay, right. Right. So now let's execute this. And if this is, I can also put it in an if statement, guys. So let me make this as if. So I execute update, and if this returns me greater than 0, इसका मतलब है successfully insert हो गया. Okay. Then I would like to write one block. Otherwise, I would like to write my exception handling there. So here I would like to return true. Return. Okay. Otherwise, I can do this at the outside. 1 second, guys. So let me create one Boolean. Record inserted is equal to false. Okay. So I will make this record inserted equal to true. Otherwise, I can do the exception handling here. Write the logic for handle exception. Okay. So here also, if anything happens, I can also throw the exception message. So I will be able to return you. You can also make this as is record inserted. So initially is record inserted, it will be false. If I get a return execute update value greater than 0, then I will make that is record inserted equal to true. So आपको क्या मिलेगा इसका return value, इसका value return मिलेगा true. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, आपको मिलेगा false. Okay, so this is my implementation of add employee. So now let me go to the driver. So this add employee will going to give you boolean. So आपको boolean print कर लो. Okay, so now I can directly print it here if I want. Otherwise, you create one boolean. Boolean inserted is equal to this. System.out employee inserted. Okay, so now let's try to see this. So, but if you run this particular application once, so then this particular ID you have to change it for the next iteration, because otherwise it will going to violate your unique primary key. So now let's try to run it. So you can see that it is telling me that, so it is connection is successful, and it is telling me that employee inserted equal to true. Okay, guys. So now let's say, sorry.
सर एक क्वेश्चन था.
हाँ, प्लीज पूछिए ना.
हाँ सर, जैसे ये ड्राइवर है, ड्राइवर से
हाँ.
ये फिर हम एम्प्लॉय सर्विस के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन क्लास में जा रहे हैं.
करेक्ट.
ठीक है. और सर
Correct.
इम्प्लीमेंटेशन क्लास में जाने के बाद सर हम रिपोजिटरी पे जा रहे हैं इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की.
परफेक्ट. हाँ.
हाँ सर, उसके बाद सर फिर हम MySQL वाले डेटाबेस में जा रहे हैं. फिर डेटाबेस जो दे रहा है फिर वो रिवर्स फॉर्म में ड्राइवर के पास पहुंच रहा है. ठीक है सर.
Perfect. That's what we are. That's why I wrote this diagram.
यस सर. सर इसमें ये पूछना था कि हम जैसे ड्राइवर से डायरेक्ट इस पे नहीं जा सकते रिपोजिटरी वाले पे और फिर डायरेक्ट उस पे जाए MySQL वाले पे सर. सर ये
हाँ,
मतलब
we can.
सर्विस से हो करके क्यों जाने की जरूरत है रिपोजिटरी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन?
जरूरत क्या है बोले तो, when my project becomes complicated.
यस सर.
ठीक है. So suppose if something is wrong in my business implementation, so I will be able to come to the service layer and I will be able to attempt this particular method only. So
Okay.
we are trying to do the modularization of our project. So JB आपको entity DTO class को change करना है, अभी सीधा DTO package में आ जाओ. JB आपको access logic change करना है, so DAO package में आ जाओ. Service change करना है, so service package में आ जाओ. So आपको पता है कहाँ पे आपको सर्विस लॉजिक चेंज करना है. सपोज आपको ड्राइवर चेंज करना है, सो आपको ड्राइवर में आके जो भी आपको सर्विस चाहिए वो कॉल करो. सो देन सर्विस में आके जो भी आपको whatever repository method you want to call, you can call all the repository methods from here, so that your entire service will depend on your employee repository.
Okay sir.
Yeah. So otherwise I can also write all the logic here only. No, we wrote already that.
Yes sir.
We wrote all the logic in the same file. Let's say tomorrow I want to connect to a different database, and let's say I want to perform different operations. So we write our logic, business logic once, and we write our data access logic once, and we going to use this however we want.
Yes sir.
We'll take a different case study so you get an idea. So right now you try to understand how you can write your business logic and your data access logic separately and make it look like a single project or a single application. Abhi it is looking like a single application now. You can see.
Yes sir.
हाँ,
इसको अपलोड कर दीजिएगा.
definitely. So right now you guys got it now. How to add an employee now?
Yes sir.
Similarly, आपको employee को update करना है and delete भी करना है.
Okay sir.
Yes, guys, I'll stop the recording now and I'll update the project. You guys can look into it.